What's up, YouTube? I'm going to show you guys how I built a hitch for my Festiva and how you guys can go about building yours too. So if you want to pause this list right here, go ahead and do so. So the kit is going to come with these two plates, this chain hook / gusset bracket, and these spacers. These spacers are different thicknesses, so keep note of that, because each side will take each size thickness plate, so 1/4 inch and 3/16. Here's your hardware. The M18, the thread pitch doesn't matter, just make sure you get the same thread pitch nut for it. M10 by 1.25 thread pitch does matter because the nut is bolted to the Festiva body. So basically, how I went about building my hitch was, the first step, I went and bought some 1.5 inch square tubing by 3/16 thickness. It was about $40 for 5 feet. Usually they sell it by the foot. You're not going to need that much. And you're going to want to cut that down to 39 3/8. And once you cut that down, you're going to need to make clearance for this hook, because the hook is kind of in the way of how the plates are cut. You have to do this for both sides. And if you imagine this is your square tubing that you just cut, on each end around halfway mark on both ends, and then rotate it, mark halfway on that side on both ends, and then you're going to measure 1/4 inch in on both sides, 1/4 inch in, and you're going to grind this part out with a grinder. Same thing on this side. So now that you ground that, you're going to have clearance to be able to bolt on your hitch. And the next step is you're going to have this plate with the 1/4 and 3/16 spacer. It's going to go like so. You're going to take this and you're going to bolt it with your hardware onto that hook. So I got my 18 with the big 5/8 washer, and the M10 is in there with the washer. Don't bolt it on like really tight, just snug it up. Once you do that, what I did was I guided the square tubing in on this side, and on this side I had my other plate. You slide your other plate in, and then you're gonna pivot it up basically to that mounting point. And since the plate isn't welded, you can slide it way in, and that'll give you room to put your other set of spacers in. And you use that hardware. And you snug this side up also, don't tighten it too much. Now that you have that on with the square tubing in the middle of both plates, it's going to slide a little bit, so you're going to want to center it up on both sides. Once you do that, you're going to tack it in place. I tacked it here, here, here. You could also do the other bottom. Do that on both sides. And then your next step is going to be marking the center to give you a reference to put your receiver tube. So I had from this point of the inside of the plate to this point inside of the plate, I had, let's see, 39 1/4 is what I measured. So half of that would be 19 1/8. So then I measured here, which is the center, and then my receiver tube that I bought by Kurt, that measures 1 5/8 from edge to edge. So the center of that is 13/16. If you buy a different one, make sure to measure it. Then I marked that. So that gave me a reference of the lines, and the way I mounted this or welded it up was I had a flat piece of bar, or you could use like a flat piece of wood or something, and then I clamped it down here and up here to the with like a C-clamp or something. And this basically just gives you a resting spot for that receiver tube, so you don't have to mess around with, you know, holding it in place while you tack it, and that it's flush or perpendicular. Just make sure that you don't put it all the way up to this lip, because that lip will set it up wrong. So when you do that, give clearance for that lip so that this bottom piece sits flat. Once I did that, you know, you just you measure up those lines, you hold it, push it in, make sure it's flat, and then you tack it on 4 corners. So now you got that tacked, the square tubing tacked to the mounting brackets. Now you can take the bolts off, take your hitch off, and now you can do all the welding. What I did was I rotated it 90 degrees, and I clamped it on a table vise, and that was way easier to weld all these. I just rotated the square tubing every time I needed to get a new side. This one I welded all these all the way around on the inside. I didn't do the outside. You can if you want, but I don't think it was necessary. I welded all 4 sides of this, and then the next step was to weld this. So the bottom weld is going to protrude, so you're going to want to grind that flat so that your gusset plate can sit right up against this tube and this tube, and then you center it up. This will go all the way to the back. Let's see if I can. It'll go all the way to the back of the square tubing. So you center this up, you know, to where it looks even, and then you just weld. I welded every contact spot on the bottom here, over here, here, and then on the back side all the way across. So that's the way I did that. So now your hitch is all welded up. So what you're going to do is you're going to paint yours. I didn't paint mine because I was looking for a trailer. I was going to travel out of town, and long story short, I'm going to take it off again and paint it. So once it's painted, the way you're going to install it, you're going to bring it in on this side and put your hardware, but don't put in the spacers yet. This is just to hold this side while you work on the other side. So now on this side, you're going to bring it up to that hook, and you're going to use this tab with like a plier or something, but you're going to guide it up like this until it lines up. It's going to be a tight fit. This is why I mentioned in the beginning not to tighten these all the way when you're doing the tack welding. Just enough to where the pieces are touching each other. So then you slide it up. You're going to do a lot of wiggling, so you're going to want to grab the hitch tube up and down until you line these up, and you can push this bolt through, and then the M10 you're going to want to start by hand on both sides. Start it by hand. You're going to have to do a lot of wiggling. And once you have this side started and lined up with both spacers and stuff, then you can come over to the other side and you're going to do the same thing. You'll remove that bolt that was holding it up, and you'll use that tab to run those spacers up till your bolts line up. And since you don't have the other side completely bolted in, you have room to move the hitch back and forth till it lines up. It's a little bit tedious, but you know, that's the way I kind of had to do it so that I could have a solid plate on this side to be able to do this style. Once that's done, you know, you can bolt it up. I don't have the lock washer right now, but I'm gonna install it once I paint it and get it back on again. Then once you do that, you can work on your trailer harness. I had the bumper off because initially I was gonna do a support from here and weld it down to here, but it's plenty strong, so I'm not gonna end up doing that anyways. But while I had the bumper off, I decided to cut a hole here and put a grommet so that I can run the wiring through. And yeah, that's going to be another video too on which wires which to tap into. But you don't have to do the access hole here, you know, you can do it down here at the spare well or somewhere else, so you don't have to take the bumper off. So yeah, that's kind of how I went about it. Some notes that I kind of have considered is maybe you can paint the mounting surfaces, because I haven't installed this yet when it's painted, so I don't know how much trouble I'm gonna have with that added thickness on all these components. So what I was thinking is maybe if you paint like the side that's going to be mounted, and then you paint these before you do the tacking, that's gonna account for the clearances and stuff when you're gonna install it. Either way, you know, these are just because of how it's tacked and stuff, these are gonna have to be kind of forced in. It's gonna be a little scratched, but that's just the way it is. With these, another thing that you can do is you can kind of grind some, I would say like a bevel, an angle at the very top of both of these, so that when you're sliding it in between both plates, it's a lot easier to slide. It won't catch on anything or scrape even too much more. These haven't been ground down yet. Let's see. Another note is these are, you know, gonna come individual, but if you want, you can weld, like run a bead, a little bead here, a little bead here. Just make sure they are aligned, and then you won't have two individual ones that you're trying to line up, you know, when you're installing it. It would be just one single piece. And then just make sure the weld doesn't come up onto the flat side, because these need to be flat on these sides. That's something you could do, but you're not going to be taking this on and off all the time. But if you are, then yeah, that would definitely help. Another point that I was thinking about is my muffler clearance. Right now I have about 1/2 inch clearance. I have the Walker OEM muffler with the other piece, the down tube or whatever. If you have a lower hanging muffler, you might have to cut or grind down like a relief here so that you're not hitting I'm just still in the light testing area. You know, I could also cut this bracket to where it drops down the bar lower, but that would change more leverage on the bolts and stuff. But like I said, it's just testing right now, and this is how I built my hitch. So hopefully this helps you guys, gives you a general idea of how to go about it. So yeah, peace out, YouTube.